Good afternoon. On behalf of Hospice Simcoe, I'd like to welcome you to this service in memory of loved ones. My name is Lori, and I'm the Spiritual Care Coordinator at Hospice, and I want to thank you for joining us today. We're glad that you can be part of this important time of remembering. We wish that we could come together in person, but we hope that the knowledge that many are gathered in their homes today, together with you, gives you comfort and a feeling of togetherness. We know that this is an emotional time and that sharing memories can be painful. How do we begin to find comfort and strength and courage in the midst of the sorrow we feel? When we are put through the unthinkable, how do we keep faith in light of that tragedy and the reality before us that we can't change? And when our pain is so great at times, it's hard to breathe. Where do we find hope? Well, one answer is that we find hope in remembering, and we find hope in coming together and acknowledging the sadness we feel. While we cannot lessen your sorrow, we hope that this service of remembrance can be a safe place for all who are watching, and that the loss and pain that you feel will be acknowledged, and that your cherished memories of your loved ones will be honored. In sharing this service together, may we find small rays of comfort and light for the road ahead. I'd like to begin with a poem by Pam Harvey. We remember because it gives us purpose. We remember because it gives us hope. We remember because it gives us a reason to meet each day. We remember to give them honor. And we remember because when we do, it brings them here to where we are. Now I'd like to invite Isabel, one of our volunteers at Hospice, to lead us in a responsive reading of Remembrance.
This is a responsive reading. After I say a line, you're invited to respond with the words, "We remember them." In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we remember them. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember them. In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember them. In the blueness of the sky and the warmth of summer, we remember them. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember them. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember them. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember them. When we have joys and we yearn to share, we remember them. So long as we live, they too shall live, for they are now part of us as we remember them.
When someone dies, one of the aspects that is particularly hard to bear is the thought that they may be forgotten. We don't want them to be forgotten. We who are left are the keepers of their memory, the ones who will give life to the beauty of who they were, their laugh, their voice, the little ways that they were unique to them, how they smiled, how they walked, the things they loved, and the many ways they influenced our lives. We speak their names because they are part of us. Everything that we do, everything that we are. We speak their names because they are still and always will be a part of our lives. So now we will listen as the names of these remembered are spoken.
John Benson, Susan Bois, Kathy Buckingham, Donald George Bulmer, Andrew Peter Christie, Edna Clare, Barbara Ann Cormack, Dale Courier, Oli Tchaikovsky, John Charles Eckensviller, Jerry Elias, Vitor Estevez, Ian Godbold, Norm Grant, Audrey Hawkins, Jesse Hubbard, June Hutton, Eugene Jesperson,
Hazel Mary McNeil, Polly Mananan, Robert Weldon McComb, John Howard McCohen, Irene Milroy, Ida Mornan, Michael Munshaw, Ryan Naylor, Robert Pasapume, Bill Player, Ronette Shewell, Carol Stoddard, Al Tressoff, Charlene Urbach, Carl Joseph Webb. And now we invite you to speak the name of your loved one out loud, wherever you are.
Throughout the world, light is a beautiful symbol, signifying hope and remembrance. Light brings warmth to a cold space, illumines darkness, scatters doubt, and shines like a beacon, even through the hardest of days, guiding us and offering hope when we can't see it. We are gathered here to remember those who have died and to let them know that they are not forgotten. Their light still shines in our hearts and within our lives. So we will now begin the candle lighting. One light for each name read here today. And we invite you, watching at home, to light a candle at the same time if you wish, in memory of the people you are missing. Their light will forever shine. I'd like to introduce one of our volunteers, Lynn Drolet, who is going to share a reflection that she has written for today.
Good afternoon, everyone. Before I share the story of the Lantern Retreat, I invite you to imagine yourself present on an island. I welcome you to enter that space and feel the warmth of the summer days and the tranquility of nature. Did you know that summer bereavement camps actually exist in Ontario? Camp Skene is one of those camps. This bereavement children's camp operates on a private island in Kawartha Lakes. Children between the ages of 7 and 16 who have lost a parent or a sibling are invited to spend a full week there in August. The story I'm about to share with you is inspired by Camp Skene, but the characters are adults. I invite you to picture a lake, trees, birds, and to walk hand in hand with these characters as they explore grief. Let's put our sun hats on and begin our story now. It was the first day of the retreat. 20 participants had just completed icebreaker activities that had helped them introduce themselves. Participants of this retreat were grieving and had lost spouses, parents, siblings, children, and friends. Some had suffered multiple losses, and others had even lost someone to the COVID-19 virus. The ad for the retreat had been posted on social media. It had read like this: "Escape to a peaceful island refuge where grief is honored during our Lantern Retreat. Bring a picture of your loved one and a small memorial object with you." The participants had arrived on the Saturday for a 6-night stay. As they had entered their individual rooms, some had smiled at the sight of the single cozy bed as it was covered with little surprises: handwritten grief quotes, a new journal with an aqua blue gel pen, a soft throw, and a 7-day activity menu to help guide them during their stay. Feeling vulnerable, others were lost in the fog-brain thoughts. Among the 20 participants were 2 individuals, a man called Marcel and a woman called Eva. Marcel had lost his spouse 7 months ago. It had been a sudden loss, and he was not doing very well. With this pandemic, he had been isolated from his family and friends. Young Eva had lost her father to COVID-19 2 months ago. She hadn't been able to be present at the hospital when her father died, and she was feeling many emotions, especially anger toward the virus. Anger toward the fact that she was forced to face her father's death without being by his side. Anger that her father had to die alone at the age of 50. That first day was a difficult one. Participants were adjusting to being on the island and uncertain if this retreat was a good idea or not. After dinner, they had been asked to gather around the campfire. The lawn chairs had been set in a large circle. It was then that the Indigenous woman called Mirror Moon had joined the participants. Mirror Moon always wore a sincere smile, and her eyes communicated much compassion and wisdom. She had welcomed everyone and then explained that the next 2 hours were dedicated to storytelling. She had taken out a sacred feather and explained that it would travel around the circle. The person holding the feather would have the honor of speaking. Mirror Moon had also explained that participants could pass if they didn't want to share that night. When the feather had made its way to Marcel, he had taken the opportunity to speak of his loving wife of 45 years. They had been soulmates. Marcel had expressed his feelings and explained that the loneliness was unbearable and that he couldn't move on. All he wanted to do was look at her pictures. His appetite was lost, along with his joy. He shared his difficulty in concentrating and that he had had a hard time getting up in the morning. Ava couldn't bring herself to sharing that night and had passed the feather to the next participant. She was truly hurting and felt very alone. Her mother had encouraged her to join this retreat. Ava didn't know if anyone would understand her anger, a deep anger that had invaded her spirit. When everyone had had a chance to speak or pass, Mirror Moon had finished with these words: I see you in your suffering. I am a witness to your grief, and I'm very sorry for your important losses. We look forward to hearing more about your loved ones. Thank you for sharing your stories tonight. You are not alone here. The next morning, after the silent walk in the forest and the Yoga for Grief session, everyone was asked to gather in the workshop. It is there that the participants were told about Oban, a custom of Buddhist origin where people return to their hometowns, visit cemeteries to leave offerings, and light lanterns outside of their homes and on the water. While the Oban holiday deals with death and honoring the death, Oban is usually a happy time. In the workshop is where participants were introduced to Kyle, the carpenter. Kyle explained that everyone would be building a small wooden boat for the Oban celebration later that week. Each boat was to be decked with flowers and lanterns, sometimes with a picture, and often with a small memorial object. This is where Marcel and Ava spoke for the first time. Marcel had noticed that Ava was teary-eyed that morning. He wondered what her story was. Ava recognized sincerity in Marcel's spirit and had shared that her father had died 2 months ago. Marcel had felt sorry for her. She was too young to lose her father. He had then invited her to work beside him. When Ava started hammering, Marcel noticed that she was feeling intense emotions. He had asked her an important question. What has happened to you? What's your story, Ava? This is when the tears had started to flow from Ava's eyes. Worm tears, choked up tears, loving tears, angry tears. Marcel was patient. She then started telling her story, her grief story. The story that she couldn't bring herself to share with others because too many questions were being asked. Questions like, where did your dad get infected with the virus? Why wasn't he protecting himself from this virus, etc.? Ava couldn't stand those questions. She felt like she was being interrogated. That was a big part of her anger. She just couldn't understand how others could be so insensitive to her loss. Marcel, on the other hand, hadn't asked any of these questions. He had listened and allowed pauses as she organized her thoughts. He had not judged, given advice, or tried to fix her. For the first time in 2 months, Ava had found a moment of connection. In the next couple of days, as they progressed and worked on the finishing touches of their lantern boats, they were reminded that the celebration was scheduled for Thursday evening at sunset, 8:30 p.m. The participants were told that the lantern boats would all be set on the water. Marcel had taken much time preparing his boat. He knew his wife would be proud. She had loved flowers, and he had covered the lantern with them. The memorial object was a hair elastic that she wore daily. Marcel would talk to her as he was building, but not out loud because he didn't know what the others would think. He had reminded her that he missed her and had told her that he wished she had not died and that he missed having her by his side, that he felt lost and incomplete without her. Thankfully, many grief discussions were happening that week. Participants were given journaling prompts, and many were pouring their hearts out into the journal, an object that absorbed the words in a welcoming way. Ava was happy that her notebook was spiral bound, so that she could rip out some pages. Mira Moon had had a long walk with Ava and encouraged her to write about her anger. She had said to Ava that the paper in the notebook could handle the anger and that it would be a healthy way of releasing it. Ava had done this. She had walked the labyrinth quietly and then had taken refuge in the pontoon boat, the vessel that they had all boarded on the Saturday to get to the island. Luna, the black lab, had watched Ava as she had written in her journal. Many salty tears had washed over Ava's cheeks during that hour. Luna had put her head on Ava's leg and witnessed the heart-healing process. Mira Moon had also said that the pages could be burned afterwards. She had described it as a healing ritual where the anger would be released through smoke into the universe and no longer carried in the heart. Marcel had seen Ava put some pages in the campfire. He had watched the smoke rise. He wished her well. When Ava's eyes had risen from the fire, she had noticed Marcel at the birds' feeding sanctuary. She had walked over to him and had explained that she felt drained but lighter. Ava added that she had written to the COVID virus, calling it a murderer. She had given the virus a piece of her mind and told it to stay away from her and everyone else. Thursday arrived faster than anyone had anticipated. The celebration was going to start with an evening feast by the water. Extra place settings were set at the table for the loved ones who had passed. The small lantern boats were set on a separate table. Retreat participants had understood that this celebration would be symbolic. At 8:30 p.m., their boats would be set afloat on the water. Some would hop onto the pontoon boat, and others would get into kayaks to bring the small boats onto the water in the middle of the bay. Large LED candles were then lit inside the lanterns, and the boats were left to drift. That night, Marcel and Ava had been in the pontoon boat together. They had set their lantern boats side by side on the water and had introduced Marcel's wife and Ava's father to each other. When all participants had come back to shore, they had been amazed at what they had been witnessing and had cried pearls of love. Approximately 30 lantern boats were on the water together. The water had been still. The candle lights had flickered and danced. Ava had been particularly touched. For the first time in months, she had felt that her father was okay. She could feel that he was not alone, but surrounded with good souls. The scene of the dancing lights in the darkness had given her strength. That night, she started to open with others, sharing her story of love for her father, the story of how proud she was of him and honored to be called his daughter. Marcel had continued to speak of his lovely wife throughout the week. When he had witnessed the lights dancing on the water, Marcel had felt that his wife was happy, and he found peace in that. He vowed that night that he would continue to share his story and connect with others to combat the loneliness. The next day had been the last day of the retreat, and everyone was still actively celebrating the Oban tradition. The lantern boats were being packaged in colorful boxes for participants to bring home as a souvenir. At the same time, participants had been starting to say goodbye. Eva had approached Marcel in the community room. She had explained to him that she would miss him. Marcel had said that she was important to him as well. Not sure how it happened, but the two of them decided that they would adopt each other. Eva would become his adopted universal daughter, and Marcel would become her adopted universal dad. They had promised to keep in touch. And for now, dear listeners, that's the end of the Lantern Retreat story. As we all reflect on that story now, in this present moment, let's look forward to those bonfires where we can share our stories. And if warm, salty pearls of love wash over our cheeks, let's welcome them. Let's find people that are safe to share our vulnerable heart experiences with. People that will allow grief to be talked about. Let's spend time outside with nature and animals. Let's meditate and stretch our bodies. Let's write. Let's light those candles and speak of our loved ones who have died. Let's practice self-compassion and be our own best friends. Let's find the Marcels and the Evas and walk side by side with them, each witnessing each other's suffering without trying to fix it. No one is alone. And if you would like to build a small lantern boat, you can find information online. The Oban celebration is real and happens in multiple countries. The story you've just heard is fictional. Thank you.
I know that it's been hard for you. It must be hurting you. And I can feel how it pulls at you. It pulls at me too. I would run away to the world I left behind. I will find a way back to you. And when you've got nowhere to turn, and you're all alone, and your walls are all breaking, and there's no escaping, I'd fly through the night to get back to your side. I'll be your safe place to hide.
your side. I'll be your safe place to hide. I'll be your safe place to hide.
I would like to share with you a reading about sunflowers by Helen Keller. Keep your face to the sunshine, and you cannot see the shadows. It's what the sunflowers do. Sunflowers turn according to the position of the sun. In other words, they chase the light. You might already know this, but there's another fact that you probably do not know. Have you ever wondered what happens on cloudy and rainy days when the sun is completely covered by clouds? Perhaps you think the sunflower withers or turns its head towards the ground. Well, it does something entirely different, in fact. This is what happens. Sunflowers turn toward each other to share their energy. Nature's perfection is amazing. Now let's apply this to our lives. At times in life, we may become low-spirited, and at times we feel like giving up hope. We are surrounded by clouds. At these times, we can remember the beautiful sunflowers. May we support and empower each other, turning towards each other on our cloudy and gloomy days. Go today, knowing the sunflower's truth, that we can lean on each other when we need a little light. Spread goodness, and it will come back to you.
I would like to thank you for joining us today. And I would also like to thank everyone who took part in planning this service and filming it here today. We hope that this time of remembering has been a small help to you, and that it will make the days to come a little easier to bear and help remind you that you're not alone. And certainly at Hospice Simcoe, we have support for you. All of the information is on our website, and you can contact us at any time. Thank you for taking part today. May the light of love continue to shine within and around you.